Information to help you run your business better and improve your marketing campaigns. My name is Hank Hoffmeier, and thank you for joining me on Hank's Marketing and Business Tips. I'm really excited today because Josh Dodson is with us. He's with VisionPoint Marketing. And what we're going to do today is, rather than just tell you maybe how to do something to market your brand, or the why you should do something to market your brand, or maybe even the how, we're going to talk about something very interesting. I read a blog article by Josh, and it talks about strategy versus tactics when it comes to marketing your business. Josh is the Director of Research and Integrated Marketing at VisionPoint Marketing. Take a look at their website if you have a chance. I know Josh is going to let us know where to find them at the end of the podcast today. But Josh, I appreciate you coming on today. And like I said, that blog article was very eye-opening to me, because even myself, I tend to just execute more than I research and plan and then execute. So I think our audience is going to get a treat today when we talk about looking at both elements.
Absolutely. Thank you. I'm thrilled to be here and talk with you a little bit about that. I'm glad that you enjoyed the article.
If you can, not saying a Twitter version, but I know the article is a little bit lengthy, and I encourage everyone to read it. I'll include it in the show notes. Can you tell me what you meant by strategy versus tactics?
Sure. So with the strategy, the thing to really keep in mind is that it's kind of like a guiding principle for the tactics. The tactics might be an individual channel or a very specific thing you're doing. Maybe you're doing some advertising on Facebook or Google AdWords or some kind of channel like that. It's a very specific in the weeds piece of your overall plan. But the strategy itself really guides that and helps that plan go to kind of a higher level of reaching the goal. And that's one of the really important things, is that we try really hard to be goal-centered and goal-focused, so that really all of the tactics and everything that we're really trying to accomplish works together towards that goal. So I would think, if you think about strategy as a guiding principle, I think that really helps.
Great. Yeah, I think, in the article you were talking about setting that plan, actually first start with a goal, then create the plan to reach that goal. Then what are you going to use? Like you said, what tools are you going to use to actually execute that plan? When you think of it in that type of approach, you actually have more opportunities to catch mistakes, maybe even to elevate your content and make it better, more valuable, because you're thinking about what you're doing rather than just saying, oh, I have to go put a tweet out, or I need to go post on LinkedIn, and I'm just going to do it right now on the fly. I actually do that every now and then. I'm not saying that's horrible, because you do need to put some content, but maybe that's more for like your Instagram stories or just a quick post on LinkedIn. But you really want to develop that long-term strategy. This way, the tactics become more easier to operate, I guess is what I'm saying. What you can do is go in and you can start planning and scheduling your posts that are more tactical, and then inject stuff that's more spur of the moment. Would you agree with that?
Absolutely. If you're able to, as you point out, think about the strategy as you're kind of working through the tactics, it can sometimes help you refine it. Sometimes go a little bit more specific in terms of, for example, if you're trying to target, I think one of the examples from the article was trying to target alumni, and it's not just enough to target alumni. You really need to define those parameters and the way and the approach that you're going to, the approach you're going to take when you're trying to target them with the various tactics and different channels where you're trying to reach them. And so, if you're able to keep that in mind, then once you're in the moment, it becomes much easier, because you might want to publish that tweet or that Facebook post just on the fly, and that's perfectly acceptable. But in the back of your mind, you can keep, going back to that strategy, and that's really going to help shape what you're saying, how you're saying it, and who you're saying it to.
Right. And what that makes me think of is a webinar I'm preparing for, and it's talking about branding and how, number one, how you can brand your business. And I have a co-host, Annie Franceschi, who's going to help on that part. But I'm going to talk about the email side. To make a long story short, I say, how you collect emails through forms and how you brand your forms. Then what you want to do is make sure you're segmenting correctly, right? So that you're gathering the right data so that you can target correctly. Then you want to build your personas. Who are you marketing to and how will you talk to them? And then talk about personalization. So would you consider that the strategy? And then I would build the tactics around using all of those elements to make sure I get the right message to the right person at the right time?
Yeah. I think that that's definitely, especially when we start to talk about things like the segmentation, like you just mentioned, right? That's a really great consideration for how you want to shape that strategy that's going to be specific to that. Now, you might have a strategy that is, something where you're trying to reach a larger audience or multiple audiences rather, in a specific way where those tactics might further be segmented, so that's kind of an important distinction I wanted to mention. A perfect example of that would be you're trying to reach multiple audiences and say Facebook advertising, but you're setting some of those audience criteria a little bit differently, so that maybe it's by the age ranges could be a little bit different, or the interest areas. It's all following the same overall principles, the overall strategy, where you're trying to reach a particular group in a particular way, but you're able to make some of those refinements specifically around things like segmentation, like you were just mentioning. So I think that's a really good example for sure.
Right, and you're just talking about Facebook advertising. They always say try to do a couple different ads to different audiences, because if you run one ad and it's to one specific demographic or interest, and all of a sudden you find it to be successful, a lot of people just tend to throw more money at it, but it actually throws off the algorithm, right? What you might want to do is say, maybe there's something in there that actually hit home and made that successful. Like you said, it could be age range, or maybe it's, whether they like certain periodicals or something, or certain websites, right? Try testing those different things out. And here at iContact, we're definitely fans of testing different things. And I bet you guys are a big fan of testing too.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that we really try to do at VisionPoint, when we're doing testing, and there's so many things that you can test, right? You can test ad variations, you can test messaging, you can test images, landing pages, and lots of different things. But we really try to emphasize getting to statistical significance. And not every single tool helps you get to the point where that the results are easy to replicate, but it's really crucial to be able to get to that point whenever possible, so that way that this specific element caused this change, or at least indicates that there may be a lift if you do more of this particular thing. And so testing is huge, and you can see amazing results by doing that.
If you had to give a tip to somebody that is just getting started with advertising or email marketing, social media, and you said finding out what it is that actually succeeded, sometimes that's tough to spot. Is there anything that you can talk about maybe where somebody can, not easily, but like better, I guess, identify what it was that made that particular campaign or message successful?
Sure. I think a lot of it has to do with the setup, and making sure that you're able to track everything appropriately, and taking those considerations, using those tracking parameters, the Google Analytics tracking code and the UTM parameters, so that if you're sending people to your website, you're able to track it back to that specific source, which again, later on helps you identify whether a particular tactic worked well or not. But if you're doing all of that stuff kind of on the front end, that pushes it down to where you can do the analysis on the back end. That's probably the most important thing to consider. If you're setting it up correctly, you can get much deeper into that analysis, and then identify some of the specific metrics where you're going to get the most amount of information. For example, are you looking for the amount it's going to take to get a lead from your website, or how much it's going to take to get a customer, or in our case in higher ed marketing, because VisionPoint's focused on higher ed marketing, how much is it going to take to get an enrolled student? And so thinking about it like that, you have the opportunity to really look at a lot of different metrics, and as long as you're able to track it back to that original source, and follow them through that process, you can make refinements along the way. And sometimes I've even seen instances where, while it seemed like one channel outperformed another channel early on, maybe for the leads, just requesting more information. In fact, it did not perform as well later on when you're taking a look at seeing how many students came as a result of those channels. So it's important to look at it at multiple phases and touch points along the customer journey.
Right. And I think Google Analytics is a great source of information because there's just so much wealth of information, demographic information, how long they're on the website, did they leave the website? Did they go to other pages? So you can look at what they're consuming, or, the age demographic of who's doing what. And then, like you said, you can further target them on different channels like email, social media, and, anything else that you might be doing, or even, it could affect your landing pages and what you're going to do with the content on there. It sounds so daunting, but I think after you get into it for a little while and absorb even the help pages on, say, Google Analytics, I think you learn more and more. So I would just say to everyone listening, if you haven't dug into Google Analytics further than just, I had 100 visitors versus, 80 last week, you want to take a look at some of the details of what's going on. How many people are consuming your content on mobile devices versus, the regular web, because you want to make sure you know all of that stuff.
Yeah, being able to change your approach and your strategy. I mean, to your point about mobile, if you discover that all of your conversions, all of the people who are wanting more information or who end up purchasing something or whatever it may be that the website's trying to achieve, if they're all coming from mobile, then that experience really needs, of course, be optimized for that. And the ad targeting, should be an important factor. Again, all of this should be guided by what your overall goals are and your approach that you're trying to take. But when you've established that and you're into some of these individual tactics, that you can start to make those adjustments and tweak and really get some really strong optimizations.
Right. I think it's great to look at numbers and maybe you have conversions on mobile, conversions on desktop. Just because mobile's higher doesn't mean that mobile is, like you said, fully optimized or has the greatest experience. Things could be good or great, but then again, they can always be better. Therefore, tweaking more to see if that number goes up or down, that helps you create a better experience for your customer. I remember working with a client a long time ago at the checkout. They sold software, as a download for Mac, but they offered you to buy the CD, and they automatically had a checkbox, and they had the CD line item there, and they found that people left the shopping cart without buying. And when they removed that and they said, "Are you interested in getting the CD? Click here," then it would add the check mark. They found that the conversions actually went up. I think it was like 63% because of that.
Wow.
Great.
Yeah.
So test the little things, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes, even some of those bells and whistles on the website, like we tend to appreciate and enjoy. Sometimes it can be, it can cause issues with achieving your goal. I've seen the exact same thing at university websites where they wanted, extra bell and whistle on their site, and somehow it prevented the number of leads and applications to come in, and making a really small adjustment completely fix the problem. So small adjustments can go a long way for sure.
Right. I have a saying for that. So it's like, marketers do what they want, not what their audience needs or wants, right? Therefore, you need to look at the customer experience, see what they want. It's not how you want to push or sell your product or service.
Right. It's the platinum rule. Do unto others as they would have you do unto them.
Exactly. Any parting thoughts, Josh, on tactics versus strategy?
I would just say that anyone who's out there thinking about, jumping into the weeds right away, there's something that, it's a temptation to do that. We want to do the exciting thing right away, but in reality, taking a little bit more time to plan and be thoughtful and determine, these are the strategies that we're going to go after. These are the guiding principles that we really want to establish. The way that our tactics are working can really just make the entire process easier in the long run. A lot less headache in terms of having to go back and fix things because it was kind of a guess initially. So I would definitely recommend putting some of that time and effort into it earlier on, and it will actually save a whole lot of time later as well.
plan for success and execute for conversions.
That's right. That's right. And you know, I'm thrilled to be here at VisionPoint, because that's exactly the approach that we take. Is, you know, we spend a whole lot of time with we call it a listening tour, where we go and we talk with all kinds of constituents, and from that process we're able to distill kind of the essence of the conversations and what those unique selling propositions are, and build those strategies out. And from that we can then go and start, you know, developing the tactics, deciding things like which media makes sense for this particular client. So yeah, I'm thrilled to be able to work in a place that does that and really emphasizes it. And I would certainly recommend taking the time to emphasize that wherever you're working as well.
Great. How can we find either you or your organization online?
Sure. So VisionPointMarketing.com, go there and you can contact us. As I mentioned before, we primarily deal with higher education clients, colleges and universities, hoping to do some marketing and improve their often enrollment goals. And you can find me on Twitter at Joshua D. Dodson.
Wonderful. Yeah, I definitely want to share the link to that article because I thought it was very informative. It'll be in the show notes. But other than that, that's a wrap for today. This is, to me, kind of exciting. I know I didn't like dance around, but, you know, analyzing data, looking at strategy, and just executing with, you know, the tactics day to day is something I like to do and like to talk about. And I'm glad we finally got into the weeds a little bit more. But again, I'm always going to iterate, you know, make sure you're creating content and putting content out there regardless, but take some time and try to plan that out was kind of the message today. And I know we kind of really dug into that, but hopefully everybody enjoys. If you want to see or hear previous episodes, you can go to YouTube or hankhoffmeier.com/Alexa. And of course, if you're going to sign up for an iContact account, you can get a $30 credit by using the code HMBT. Josh, I appreciate you being on today, and hopefully I can have you on again in the future.
Thank you. I would love that. I appreciate it.
Thank you.